And welcome to today's masterclass, how to get your managers to actually manage and save 8 hours or more, in fact, of firefighting every single week. And in this workshop today, I'm going to be showing you how to get your managers to the position where they're dealing with all the day-to-day issues, where they're taking the initiative, where they're thinking about the future, where they're planning ahead, where they're considering all the commercial impacts of their decisions and the actions that they actually choose to take so that they deliver results. All of which meaning that you will free up at least a day a week of firefighting because your managers are actually managing the operation for you effectively. Because from what I've seen, there are, and experienced in fact right now, there are loads of CEOs and MDs who feel like the team are actually more of a burden to them and are always needing them, and they're not really getting what they need from their team. And what they really want is a team that really supports them, who are in this with them, who are reliable, so that when they say that they will do something, they'll actually get it done, and a team that are actually helping them grow the business in fact too. But unfortunately for many people that's not the reality, and if you're here today, I'm assuming that a lot of the time you're feeling like your staff are taking too much of your time too, and that you're having to do things that really that they should be taking care of, and that they're actually all wanting too much from you, relying on your input and all needing your support, and actually all in different ways. So what I'm going to share with you today are some of the reasons for that, first of all, to get you thinking about what applies to you and where you are with it right now, because the first step here is about actually getting clear on what the actual problem is, because it's often just not what we think it is. And then most importantly, I'll go through what you can do about it so that you start to see improved results from your team, so that your team progress in the way you want them to, so that they're doing the right things, focusing on the right work, and ultimately making the right decisions, so that they're being commercial and proactive, so that they're focused on doing things that either make you money or are important to have in place to help you grow your business. Now, to do that, I'm going to walk you through a framework that I use. I use this with my clients, and it focuses on 3 essential areas that once you implement will get your team managing. And these areas are leadership capability, leadership enablement, and leadership infrastructure. And when you master those 3 areas together, you will create a management team that actually delivers results and doesn't rely on you. So before I do that, I'm going to just quickly introduce myself. Now, I hate long introductions in these types of sessions, so I'll take no more than a minute to do that quickly, but I want to share a couple of points really so that you know what I share with you today is worth your time and worth listening to. So I'm Leanne Bridges. I spent 30 years leading teams in both corporates and growing SMEs. And in the last 12 years specifically, I've been advising growing businesses how to get the best results from their people and teams. Now, I did that initially as a people and culture director in-house in a niche gas business, but predominantly was really a chemical engineering and manufacturing business. And we grow that business and team across Europe. And then in the last 5 years, I've been operating my own business, advising CEOs and MDs and senior stakeholders how to do the same in their businesses too. And you'll find that there are over 50 recommendations for my work. Now, if you'd like to know any more than that, then have a look on LinkedIn. That's the best place to connect with me. And I actually share daily insights on that platform. To connect, just either scan the QR code there or type my name into LinkedIn. Let me know that you were on today's masterclass, and make sure that you connect with me by clicking that more button and then clicking connect. And by doing that, then if you've got questions, then you can just drop into LinkedIn and ask them, and I'd be really, really super happy to help after today. So let's get into the good stuff. Enough of the introductions. So look, from all the businesses that I've worked with and I've spoken to across the last 5 years of doing this specific work in my business, I've noticed that there are 5 common obstacles that actually prevent managers from managing. And they're the reasons why business are actually struggling right now to grow together. And instead, the CEO or MD is feeling like they're kind of pulling teeth when it comes to getting results from their team and their people. And I'm going to run through them with you quickly now. And what I want you to do as I do that is start to think about those that are resonating or apply to you. So look, if you're off multitasking, can I just have your attention now? Because I really want you to get the most from this session. So as I go through these issues, just spot those that apply to you. And then as we go through, you can see like what it is that you need to do to resolve these issues. And you can be considering them, the things I go through, in the context of actually what's going on for you in your business. So as I go through each one, just chat into the comments if that applies to you. And if there's anything that actually strikes you about that issue in your business right now. So here we go. The most 5 common obstacles that preventing managers from actually managing right now, and they're these. First of all, that the CEOs or MDs are finding that some of their teams just aren't taking the initiative. They're not spotting what needs to be done, what issues need sorting out, and they're just not really thinking ahead enough to prevent problems that are coming down the line without the CEO or MD getting involved. And it could be something operational, customer issue, maybe a team problem that's just gone on and it's just dragging on far too long. And so it's leaving the CEO or MD firefighting issues instead of actually moving their business forward. Now, that's because and actually because their managers aren't being proactive. The other thing that's happening is that they're not asking other people in the business to do what's needed of them early enough, and so then other people are getting inconvenienced, and it's frustrating them too. And so not only is the CEO or MD having to spend too much of their own time on this stuff, but it's also wasting other people's time, putting other people out, and then the MD finds himself filled in a bunch of complaints from other people because they've not had the notice that they need to get things done. And this lack of initiative, it can keep your company like really stagnant and stop it from growing. And in fact, quite often I see it keeps the business struggling to keep up with demand that it's got now, because it's just relying too heavily on the MD or just too few people. And you know, the clients that I work with and the businesses that they own and the people I speak to, these are all smart people with really good businesses, and there's often a huge demand for their product or service, but they can't really truly go after it because they're constantly concerned about the fact that the team are struggling to keep up. So, you know, let me know, do you find that your team aren't really taking enough initiative or thinking ahead without you needing to prompt them? Is that something for you? Let me know into the chat. And if you don't want to talk into the chat today, then do feel free to use the private function there, where it's not to everybody, it's just to the host, and then I'll be able to see the things that you're saying too, because I understand not everybody wants to share. So number 2 then is that even though they're holding management team meetings or one-to-one meetings, the team just aren't following through with all of the actions that they're committing to in those meetings. And these meetings can feel a little bit like a talking shop, going around the houses, and then eventually they get to the actions. But then after the meeting, people don't do the things that they committed to do. And like the MD is certain that they had an agreement about the action and what had to happen. But then, you know, in the next meeting, progress wasn't made. And if it was, sometimes they've gone off a bit of a tangent. And, you know, these team members, they are smart, they're experienced, they seem like the right people, and they might have done this level of job before, so they should really know how to do it. And others might have been with like the company for a long time and grown with the business and been promoted internally, and they're being paid a high salary, but they're just not going off and finding out what they really need to get things done. And my clients quite often say to me, like, nobody showed me every little thing that I needed to do. So it seems to them like they're having to do a disproportionate amount of time sort of guiding and chasing and following up with some of their people. So let me know again into the chat if that's something you find, if your team just don't follow through on the actions that you're sure that you've agreed with them. And then number 3 is that some of their team members are falling short. And even though the CEO or MD have had a conversation about what really needs to be happening instead and the results that they want, they continue to fall short on some of the things. And so, and if they do make some change, sometimes it can be short-lived. And the problem with that is that some of these people are actually also key people too, and they might have known them a long time, they respect them, they're certain that they should be able to do all these things in the way that they need to be done, and they keep sounding like they know what they're doing, but unfortunately things just don't seem to change. And then they leave this one-to-one meeting and then they go back to doing the same old things. And the MDs are just ending up having to have the same conversation again a month later. So let me know into the chat again, you know, have you got managers in your team that maybe aren't fully underperforming, that are just falling a little bit short of what you need, who don't seem to make the changes that you're asking for, despite having had what you thought was quite a clear conversation with them? So let me know if that's something for you into the chat. And then number 4, and let me move this on. Number 4, and it kind of sums up all of this. And I want you to let me know whether that resonates for you too. So it sort of ties everything together, and I see this all the time. It's the most common, and actually it's the most fundamentally important point. It's that both their team and their business lacks a well-defined leadership approach and framework. That means that the team can perform consistently and deliver without needing oversight. And without this structure and an effective leadership style for dealing with these people and situations. Managers aren't stepping up. And so the CEO or MD are finding themselves forced into all the detail and constantly pulled into things that really should be running smoothly. And that's because they just don't have a clear, simple, repeatable way to keep the operation and the team on track. And so without that, the burden of accountability is falling back on the MD or the CEO, and they're left with the responsibility of following up on tasks, checking things get done, holding people to their commitments, like even though really these responsibilities should be sitting with their managers. And it's this lack of an effective approach that means that accountability just isn't really being effectively shared across the team or enforced. And so the MD is chasing things up, addressing recurring problems and dealing with things that really should have been handled already, adding to their workload, pulling them away from strategic tasks, and it obviously limits their ability to focus on growing the business. And I'm here today to tell you some good news and to share with you how to tackle that. And so I'm going to be sharing with you that framework and the leadership approach that needs to be used based on the model I showed you on that last slide a moment ago, with those three elements of capability, enablement and infrastructure, because in all my experience for all the years I've done this type of work, it's this framework and implementing all of those pillars that will actually get managers managing. That's what makes the change. So that's number 4. And then number 5, so let me know into the chat actually, let me know if that's something for you, if you feel like you haven't got a consistent approach and way of dealing things and framework to be using to keep everything on track. And then number 5 is hoping things will get better with time. And I just see this all the time, just kind of hoping things will get better. And that's because these businesses, these MDs, they are so busy operationally that they just haven't got the time and attention to put on this that it needs. And there's just so much investment in people and they're paying all these salaries. And when you think about that, that is a massive cost. But understandably, these businesses are just hoping things will improve, thinking maybe when people have been there like just another 6 months, it might work itself out a bit better, or when they hire another person, maybe that's going to make everything easier, or maybe if they just put in a few more hours now and get over the hump, then that will get them there. But unfortunately, it just doesn't get any easier without focus. It just never does. And what they find is it actually gets more complicated, because the longer they leave it and the more they've grown, the more difficult it gets. And until they actually have made the decision to resolve these issues in the team and move it forward, they've never got their teams performing to the levels that they could have, and never got the business growing at the rate they wanted, because the team weren't delivering in the way that they wanted to. And so what really had to happen for them is actually to make the decision to make the change. So let me know into the chat, which of those 5 resonates for you? Is there something else that's coming up for you, actually, as I've gone through those, that you think is actually the problem in your business? Because there will be more than 5, but those are the most common. Whichever one of those resonates for you now, or if more of them, because quite often people say actually 5 or 3 of them resonate, then whichever it is for you, then we're going to go through how to deal with it now. So there are, let me just check the chat here. Okay. So there are 3 key parts to this, and they are these. There are leadership capability, leadership enablement, and leadership infrastructure. And it's these 3 things that will get better results from your team. So part 1 is this. Part 1 is leadership capability. This is about developing your leaders' capability. No surprise there. So but the focus here is on building a management team that can truly lead, takes ownership, steps up, and they can guide their team without needing all this involvement. And if you're like the CEOs and MDs that I work with, you've got a talented team already, you've got people who know the business inside and out, but somehow you're still in the thick of it all, managing issues that just shouldn't be on your plate. And so you're left wondering, why is it that this is happening? They've got the experience, they know their functional areas, yet whenever things get a bit challenging, it's landing back with you, and they're not stepping up to lead in the way that you actually need them to. Now, the reality here is that there is a gap in leadership capability. Being good at the job, I think we all know, doesn't make someone a good leader of people. And it's not just about knowing their area. They need to lead other people effectively. And that's where they struggle, because leading people is just so different to knowing the technical side of the role. And they need something like more than advice or tasks handed to them. They need the skills to actually be able to lead. Now, in my programme, I go through 16 of these. I know from years of experience will drive change and create a high-performing team that actually deliver results. But I obviously haven't got time to go through all of those now. And the thing is, but I am going to go through some of them. So the thing of it is, though, before I do that, is most managers don't actually need a massive overhaul. All they need is just a few tweaks and changes sometimes, and it just makes a massive difference. It can be just subtle shifts that allow them to really step into those leadership roles and just do so well. So like I said, I can't go through all of them now, but I am going to go through 3 of them with you, and they are the 3 that I find tend to be most commonly missing. And if you notice these skills missing in your team, then definitely these are areas for you to focus on addressing, because it will be game changing for you. So the first is this: it's delegating clearly and effectively. Now, if you've noticed the team just aren't completing work on time, or the results are falling short, then one of the most common reasons is actually the way the delegation has been done. It is either not happening or it's not been done right. So your managers might be asking for work to be done, but it isn't getting delivered to the standard or the deadline that is needed. And the reason is rarely that your managers are incapable, it's that they just haven't learned how to do it effectively. And so they're struggling to set clear expectations and set out like really what's required, or to set deadlines in the right way. And I had it recently with a manager who worked for a client of mine, and his team weren't processing orders in the right time frame. And when he dug into it, it boiled down to not delegating or monitoring the work effectively. The deadlines weren't clear, the process wasn't clear enough between the team members. The manager wasn't putting enough focus into what his teams were actually doing. Now, the MD rightly had assumed the team would naturally have just done that. But when we dug into it, it wasn't going on. He hadn't done that. And so once we worked on his delegation skills with him, the change there was just immediate. And it's so common, though, to assume that managers will do something that just seems so obvious to you. And for him in that situation, it actually saved him hiring another person by digging into that, because he'd actually thought that the team were under-resourced. And I have to tell you, I see that all the time. Teams thinking they just don't have enough people, but it's so often not the issue. It's so often down to a leadership skills gap and a lack of taking the right actions. So yes, everybody is busy, but the question is, are they actually effective? And it's something really interesting to, for you to take away and reflect on. Yes, they're busy, but are they doing those things that are actually effective and going to shift the needle for you? So that's delegation skills. I'm going to move on now because I'm just a bit conscious of time. The second gap I notice is, you probably won't be at all surprised at this, very often managers avoid addressing issues. So whether that's underperformance or missed deadlines, or actually behaviour that's just dragging the team down, managers feel uncomfortable dealing with it, or unsure like how to approach it in a constructive way. Now, when performance issues are ignored, of course they fester, they grow, they lead to more underperformance and discontentment in the rest of the team. Some of your better performers probably feel fed up with it and want to leave, and start thinking like, why am I going to bother if that person sitting there isn't really doing their part? And all that spirals into a kind of moaning negativity in your culture that you just don't want or need. So to lead effectively, your managers need the skills to address these challenges head on in a way that keeps everybody on track and doesn't distract from the culture that you've created. They need the skills to handle these conversations really well. And when they do that, they don't just solve immediate problems, they actually create a culture then that starts so that everybody knows like what's expected of them, that they feel accountable, motivated to contribute, and actually makes the team even more positive and productive. And then the third area is this, motivating the team. So like we all know, leadership isn't just about getting the task done. It's about creating an environment where people feel motivated, energized and willing to do it, willing to go the extra mile. And if you've noticed teams going through the motions a bit, or sort of an air of discontentment, it's often a reflection of the leadership that they're receiving. Maybe the manager's being overly critical or coming across as a bit like abrupt or aggressive, or maybe they're just not inspiring people. And people need to feel valued at work, like they're an important cog in the wheel. We all like to feel that way, and they don't want to feel like they're just a number and unimportant, and know that their work matters. And many technically strong managers, and I work with lots of technical organisations, many technically strong managers actually struggle with that. It just doesn't come naturally to them to do that in a way that really works. And so, when that is the case, even the most capable people will only ever reach a fraction of their true potential as a leader, and their team won't ever get the results that they could have if only they were more motivated. So you might be thinking to yourself now, how do you develop that leadership capability in your team? So I'm going to walk you through an example of how one of my clients made that shift and exactly what we did. So this example is around finance director. My client had an FD who was unsurprisingly technically very capable, but he was struggling with the people side of his role. I think that's can be very often the case. And the MD found themselves constantly pulled back in to sort out problems. He was dealing with issues that really shouldn't have been landing on his plate, things like complaints that invoices haven't been paid, or teams had requested reports from finance and they just weren't getting them, or they were taking too long, and all those sorts of things that just cause problems all across the business. And it wasn't that the FD was incapable, although it did seem that way. It was actually that he lacked the skills to lead his team to get it done. And he'd already done some courses like on time management and basic management stuff. But on these generic courses, people are just really hearing theories, when in fact what they need to be able to do is to be able to do this stuff. So we used the 16-point framework that I've got to identify the gaps in his leadership capability. And when we got into it, he struggled to delegate properly, deal with underperformance, and he wasn't motivating the team, which is why I thought it would be a good example for us to go through today. And so what we did is we worked on how to delegate in a way that actually left no ambiguity for the team, so that his team knew exactly what was required. We got him confident having those tough conversations so that he was tackling underperformance directly and effectively, and we helped him find a way to inspire his team that felt good to him too, so that he could bring them together and they actually all felt important in the finance function. And over the course of a few weeks, things really started to shift. The FD was taking ownership of the team. He was setting clear expectations. He was leading the team really confidently. And the MD, who had actually been on the verge of replacing this person, found that with this support, the FD really did turn the leadership corner. And so instead of chasing him up to get things done, the MD could step back knowing that the finance team was in a safe pair of hands and that he was really looking after it and getting it moving. So to put all this together around leadership capability, to rectify any gaps in capability, it's really about getting under the skin of the problem and solving that. Because quite often, what you think is the problem isn't really the problem. So it's about getting clear on what actually is it that's driving this type of capability issue and addressing that effectively. And when that happens, you can really turn technically competent people into really fabulous leaders. So that's leadership capability. If you're here now and you're recognizing these challenges and you're wondering actually which of the 16 leadership skills might be causing the issues in your team, then I will be offering some free team audits at the end. So it's worth me mentioning that to you now. And on the call, what I'll do to help you further is explore what it is that's holding your managers back and affecting their ability to step up, so that you can address those gaps in a very targeted way and stop them relying on you all of the time. So there's a QR code here and there's a link to book a call as well, so you can use either of those. And I've helped so many clients and their teams evolve as leaders, get better results. And you'll see across LinkedIn and all the other various, these are from LinkedIn, but across other platforms too, that I've helped and done this successfully with so many other businesses, and it can work for you too. So I've got that QR code and the link on some of the slides as we move forward, in case I've not given you enough time. But if you know you want a call, then make sure that you grab one now, because I've got a very limited number of slots across the next 5 working days. So go ahead and get one now. I'm going to move on, but I'll leave the link there, and if you're trying to book one, then you'll have the chance to do that as we go through. So the second pillar then is leadership enablement. Now, right, where to start? You've built the company this far, you've taken your team through challenges, you've solved probably countless problems and kept everything moving forward. And that is exactly what's got you successful to this point. But what I find is that as the businesses continue to grow, what's required of leadership changes. And that saying, what got you here doesn't get you there. So, now it's not about being in the detail that once you needed to be and having to handle all the issues. Instead, now it's about steering the ship, setting the direction and ensuring everybody else is dealing with the issues that come up. So it's about shifting your focus to where you can have the most impact, and to create an environment where other people can solve problems independently, and letting go of those operational tasks so that you can concentrate on like strategy, growth, and mentoring your team, as opposed to sort of like having to get involved hands-on with them. And the thing is, and you'll know this, your time is like the most valuable, irreplaceable resource in the business. Yet we all know how quickly your diary can get filled up with day-to-day stuff, all those low-level things that keep coming up. And it's natural, isn't it? Because an urgent problem comes up, suddenly your day is overtaken with tasks that really someone else should be doing. And the key to leading through this and moving through that phase is about deliberately and intentionally getting your managers to manage so that you can actually do the strategic work. And in all the experience I've got of doing this work with CEOs and MDs, but one of the hardest shifts to make is getting your managers to manage and making the move from being in control to managing through managers. And that's because some of the foundational pieces just aren't there. And it's when you combine all three actions I'm sharing today, so these three pillars, that it's possible to let go and get your managers managing and actually feel comfortable enough to take a step back operationally. You know, it's about stepping into a new kind of leadership where you move from control to enablement, where you move from like firefighting to future building. You become the leader that your business really needs now at this phase, and your team become, most importantly, the kind of effective, cohesive group that you really need them to be to drive your company forward independently and confidently. So I'm going to share with you how to do this by walking you through how I've done this with clients. So the client I'll talk to you about now is an MD of a manufacturing business, and he got fantastic results by making some shifts in the way that he leads. Now, if you met him, and when I met him, he already is a brilliant leader in just so many ways. His team love working for him. He's created a really supportive, positive environment, but despite all that, he still found himself dealing with operational issues for some of his managers that they really should have been handling. And some of his managers just weren't following through on the tasks that he really needed them to do. And they weren't holding their teams accountable enough either. And it was starting to slow down business progress. And he'd also been avoiding a few tough conversations that he knew needed to happen. And so despite the team liking to work for him, he often would hear like little moans and groans about people and problems, and he couldn't understand really why, because he has actually created a really nice place to work. And so by working together, he came to understand that actually what was needed here was to shift his leadership approach to a leadership enablement. And so we took a closer look at the way that he was leading the team, what was working well, what was holding the team back, and we focused on identifying what was doing that was multiplying, here we go, multiplying. So those ways that he was behaving that was getting great results, and then what was it that was diminishing? So those things he was unintentionally doing that was actually limiting the team and hindering their performance. Now, one of the biggest multipliers was his supportive nature. You know, he has created an environment where people feel comfortable and valued, and that is such a fantastic foundation. But there were also diminishing habits then that were detracting from that, like avoiding tough conversations or not always setting clear enough expectations. And so these behaviours, though they were completely unintentional, were preventing the team from stepping up and delivering at the level that they needed to. So we worked on practical ways to modify his leadership approach to make sure his supportive style also drove accountability. And so one of the key changes was learning to set expectations in a way that also made the team accountable and got them delivering results on time. And the thing is, he actually thought he was already doing it, but he just wasn't doing it effectively. He said to me, I know what to do and I am doing it, but the problem was that he wasn't doing it in a way that was working. So I helped him shift that so that he actually set expectations and people knew that they were accountable too, which then meant that they reliably did the thing that they said that they would do. So then another area that we worked on was tackling those tough conversations that he had avoided, and he said himself he had been skirting around those a bit, and because he felt uncomfortable. It just felt really difficult. So I helped him become comfortable and confident with having those conversations. And what we did to do that is we broke down each conversation into what needed to be said, and then we practiced framing it so that it felt constructive, rather than confrontational, so that the feedback actually landed really well. And then, you know, as well as then he's set out clearly what needs to happen, is actually landing with the team and not undermining this positive environment that he created. And the thing is, like, often CEOs or MDs will say to me that they avoid some of these conversations because they might upset things, or because the teams are kind of partly performing, so they don't really want to rock the boat and sort of risk another problem. But, you know, it just doesn't have to be like that. You can have these conversations and they can be very constructive and well received. It's just about understanding how to have the conversation so that it lands really well. And the thing is that most CEOs or MDs, they learn this stuff by like reading books or maybe going on a course about the process to follow and I don't know, the steps that are needed. But the thing is, that's a little bit like learning to swim by reading a book or following the swimming process. You know, it just doesn't work. And so that's the issue, that they need to actually be able to understand people and behaviours to actually get that process to land. And that's where the issue is. It's about not understanding how to do that bit. So going back to this client, you know, after doing that work on his own leadership style and making it more enabling, the team started to deliver more consistently, thinking about what was coming down the line without needing prompting. They knew what was expected and they felt empowered to meet those expectations too. And he got his team really delivering while maintaining that nice supportive culture that they really valued. And again, it just wasn't about a complete overhaul. It was about small but very powerful shifts that transformed the way his managers performed. You know, by just shifting his approach a bit, he drove accountability, ownership. And the other thing that happened is that he role modelled effective leadership then, which then started to create a ripple effect, because the team started seeing how to step up themselves as leaders, how to lead with clarity, more conviction, and how to tackle challenges head on. So he's a brilliant role model for the team. And that shift then has given him the time to focus on business growth and leave all those operational headaches in the past. So, you know, it's this kind of deliberate change to your leadership approach that can move you from being in the day-to-day issues to truly driving your business forward and creating a team that just doesn't depend on you all the time, but it actually operates independently and confidently and helps you grow the business. So that's, I'll stop there. That is, I could go on, but that's leadership enablement. So I want to move on now though, because I'm just a bit conscious of time, to leadership infrastructure. So let me pull up a slide for that. Here we go. So leadership infrastructure, this is about the systems, structures and processes that create the foundation that your team need to perform. Now, most CEOs and MDs believe that they've got this in place, but the reality is more often than not, it's actually only partially built, or it's not effectively working. And so without the full infrastructure and one that actually is enabling, the business will struggle to grow smoothly because there just isn't a solid framework and mechanism for everyone to operate from. And this leadership infrastructure isn't about having a business plan or holding team meetings. Those are just starting points, okay? It's about building the underlying systems that allow every part of your organisation to work in sync together. It's the strategic alignment, the communication, the accountability structures, the business culture that makes sure everybody pulls in the same direction without needing constant oversight from you. And that's why, even though many CEOs or MDs think that they've got the right infrastructure, they're still finding their managers are working at cross purposes, or projects are getting stuck somewhere, or maybe the team are clashing over who's responsible. It's because those priorities just aren't aligned. And it's easy to assume that people know what's expected because it's been discussed. But without this concrete infrastructure, like a way to consistently align, communicate and hold each other accountable, things just get lost and you end up in the weeds sorting it all out. So to share how that works in practice, I just wanted to talk about a client of mine, and he runs an engineering company and he faced this problem, and he was convinced also that his management team was aligned with the business strategy, but the reality was not that. So we dug around a bit and we found actually that each manager had a different interpretation of the result that he wanted. They were all working hard for sure, but their efforts were kind of scattered because they didn't have this unified clarity about where the business was heading or what the top priorities were. You know, there was a lot of confusion actually when we dug around. And the result of that is that there was frustration across the team, there was some misunderstandings, and there was some wasted time because people were just talking about stuff that wasn't working. And there's an example of the sorts of things that were going on. Like they've got loads of sort of pressing staff issues to resolve about getting the foundational pieces right around responsibilities and objectives and those things. But one of the directors was off working on an engagement app. Now, normally I would be so supportive of that because, you know, staff engagement's dear to my heart, it's important, and I firmly support it. But, you know, the business wasn't ready to start measuring staff engagement. You know, they just didn't have the right foundations in place for it. So it wasn't a priority. It was a bit like he was wanting to put the roof on the house before he built it. And, you know, people were also missing things because they didn't know what other people were doing, or people were treading on each other's toes. And so there's lots of little pockets of hidden conflict and friction going on. And you can see this happening because people have little squabbles about things. There's some passive aggressive comments people say, you know, those things that you can just kind of see simmering a bit under the surface. And to deal with that, we used a strategic alignment process where we brought everyone together and got them pulling in the same direction. And we got the strategy and the organizational culture to a point where it was really understood and people could see like what they needed to do and how they needed to do it too, because it's not always what you do, it's like the way that you go about it that makes such a difference. And so once we got everyone aligned, and then we'd worked on communication flows, because we obviously didn't want it to be a one-off process that people like do and then forget, because that's no good to anyone. So what we did then was put in place some really simple process around it to keep priorities clear and relevant. And then as things change, people knew that if there was a setback or an adjustment needed, the team could actually action that together and not have to escalate every single thing back to the MD to make a decision on. And, you know, like really importantly, as I said, people knew how to behave, so that they were behaving in a way that was really like constructive and helpful together. And then finally, in that infrastructure piece, for him, we built in some accountability mechanisms. So instead of the MD having to check in constantly, he knew at a glance where his teams were, and it gave him the confidence to step back and trust that the team were actually delivering. And as a result, instead of the MD, in this case, still running around to fix things, the team are working closely together now. There's cohesion. Like each manager is clear on their role, what's expected, and understands how they contribute to the overall sort of business goal. They feel like an important part of that. Tasks aren't getting missed. No one's duplicating anything, and everybody's got a sense of ownership. And so the MD now has got time to step back and focus on business growth. And he says that he's got back way more than a day a week. So for him, it just wasn't about making a massive change. We infilled existing practices. We put some simple processes around it. We completed the infrastructure piece and got it working so that everyone was aligned, communication was clear, accountability was embedded every day. And it's those small shifts that made all the difference. And having done that now, his business is growing smoothly, the team are remotivated, and he can focus on business growth. Now, I did that in another business too, and the result there was really incredible, because one of the changes around infrastructure that we made resulted in a 350-hour a month staff saving. And so that was 2.5 full-timers, and this was a fairly large SME, so I think it's like about 200 people, just from getting that framework right. And the reason was because too many people were involved in too many things. And right now that business is actually investing all those hours in growth initiatives, because that business got massive growth ambitions, instead of wasting all that time and money on things that just weren't needed. So that's leadership infrastructure. So as we start to draw towards the end of the session, there's one thing that I'd absolutely love for you to take away from today, and that is, if you want to get your managers to actually manage, it's about having the right skills, the right environment, and the right infrastructure in place. It's all of those three things that you need. And, you know, it really is easy to assume that the gaps are going to close over time and that the team will naturally figure it out. But, you know, I've seen time and time again that it doesn't, you know, that real lasting change actually needs deliberate focus and the right kind of support to get it there. The truth is, like, CEOs and MDs that I've worked with have actually already done the hardest part, which is building the business, hiring the team, navigating all the challenges along the way, but getting your team to this next level to truly lead and free you from daily firefighting isn't something that will happen without intention. Okay, it's about understanding really the subtle shifts that your business needs to make and how to put them into action in a way that actually works for your business. So some of you will be sat here now, I hope, keen to get this done, because like, why not? And so for those of you that are sat here thinking, actually, I want to get this done and I just want to move this all on, then I've got an opportunity for you to help you make these changes very quickly and very efficiently in your business. It won't be for everybody. It will be for those of you sat here thinking, yeah, I want to fix this. I want to get this sorted with my team so that I can actually grow my business and not feel hamstringed by all this stuff. And, you know, it's for people that want to take action. So if you don't want to take any action, this isn't for you. But if you're sat here thinking that you want to get this working and you want to build a team of managers who actually drive results and get stuff done, the opportunity is this. It's to join my Business Accelerator program. And that's a one-to-one program that is working directly with me, helping you to build a high-performing team in your business so that you have got the platform and the capability that you actually need to grow. And so in the programme, we work together across 3 core areas, those areas I've just mentioned, and I actually help you to implement all of that really quickly, effectively, and in an easy way. So let me just quickly run through what that looks like in practice. So the first one is leadership infrastructure. This is some of what we'll be doing. So the first thing is we would create a strategic snapshot. So we create clear goals and priorities everybody understands and acts on. So we do it in a way that they actually get it and then go off and hit their targets year after year. And then the second thing that we do, actually we don't do this all in order, but I won't go into the detail, but the second part of the programme, this pillar, is putting in place accountability frameworks. So that's about turning goals into daily action so that the team consistently delivers then against those goals without you needing to keep like prompting and overseeing it all. The third is we'll implement a communication rhythm, which basically is keeping everybody aligned, making sure the team operates smoothly without reverting to you for decisions. And we do that in such a streamlined way. The fourth is about cultural momentum. So we build on the culture you've already created, and we ensure that the core elements are there that are needed for a workplace that is positive, customer centric and high performing. And then the fifth part of that pillar is that we implement then a scalability blueprint. Now, this is about putting in place simple systems, processes, structures, so that as you grow your business, you've got everything you need in place, to grow in a sustainable way, so that you don't have to redo this work. Someone was saying to me, oh, you know, if I get to the next level, will I have to redo it? No, because you've just got a system for doing this then, and you can grow your business to whatever size you like, because all of this will work no matter business size. But it's equally nice and simple and streamlined. Then the second part is, I'm super enthusiastic, I could talk forever about it. Right, the second is leadership enablement. So this pillar is about 3 things in essence. It's about leadership skills mastery. So this is about identifying your leadership multipliers and your diminishers, so that we make sure that you use your strength, close any gaps in your leadership toolkit, and so that then you can lead effectively in every situation, deal with those things that maybe you find challenging now or avoid or aren't quite working for you, and you get the sense you need to do something. We'll fix all of that in that piece in a very targeted way. The second part of that is about behavioural intelligence. So this is about understanding human behaviour and emotional responses, because I find that this really does get in the way. And what that means is that you can manage difficult situations, anything, and I put here from anger to tears, you know, and lead in no matter the situation and in a calm, controlled and empathetic way, and keep the team focused, productive, so that they're getting the job done. And I just find that that derails so many businesses. They go to deal with something and there's this response, and then they feel a bit stuck on what to do, and then that either makes them want to flip into dealing with it formally like a performance issue, or actually avoiding it a bit longer because it's difficult, it feels difficult to resolve. So we would deal with that. And then CEO performance optimization. So this is about actually overcoming any limiting thoughts, worries or stresses, because for most of us, we've got stuff going on in our mind that is impacting on how we feel about the business and the stuff that we're doing. And so this is about really building mental resilience and make sure that we don't lose time to distractions like overthinking things, like going through a conversation in our head that we're going to have with someone loads of times, because all that stuff just zaps your time and energy. So we'll work through that. And then the third part of this is about leadership capability. And so in this part of the programme, we look at a skills gap analysis. So we'll actually look at the skills that your team have now and what the gaps are. We use the 16-point framework. It's a targeted checklist to make sure that we are dealing with the right things. And it's taken me years to refine that list, because I've worked with lots of leading high performance organisations and talent organisations, but actually sometimes it's just overly complex. So I've distilled that down into 16 very succinct points that are appropriate in an SME. So we would work through that and we would find the gaps, and then we would give you a leadership toolkit. So you would get guidance and tools on how to actually address then those gaps, so that you've got a repeatable process too. So that as the business grows, when you come up against this again and you've got maybe another person that's not delegating or another person that can't handle a performance conversation, you've got a whole load of stuff in your locker to actually be able to deal with that very quickly. They don't need to be waiting to go off on some long-winded course. Sit down an hour with them and you can get it all sorted. And then the last part is capacity for growth. So this is about making sure that you've got everything you need to attract the right people, to retain them, and then actually develop the right talent in your business with a very clear succession plan, so that as your business grows, you've got a good manpower plan mapped out on what's needed, so that you're never under capacity and always hiring at the level you need to be without like over hiring, because people are expensive, aren't they? So that's about making sure that you've got that piece right, because really your business will only grow to the capacity that it has and to the talents of the people you have in it. So we need to make sure that you've got that piece right for your business. So the way that all gets delivered is in 4 core components. So those are the bits that we would cover. This is how it's delivered. So it's, as I say, one-to-one with me. We work together on this. There are 2 1.5-hour sessions each month, and that's to both develop your skills and then give you the tools and help you work out how to implement them quickly and easily in your business. And so I'll tailor that support specifically to you. And what we'll actually do is not work through that program like step by step, but we will find out what your biggest issues are right now and we'll solve those first. And I'm doing that right now with somebody who's been with me 3 sessions now, and he has fixed one team issue already, and he's well on his way to fixing another. And these are like big departments of his business. So their core functional areas, it actually got to the root cause and got actions, and he's fixing it right now. So the results are quick because we work in a very tailored way. So I also give you then toolkits and frameworks. So I give you all the toolkits, frameworks, processes, checklists that just give you a really simple, guaranteed way to implement the changes. And actually loads of them are like just lift and drop. So like the communications process I talk about, that's all written out for you, and you literally just tweak and tailor it for your business. There's a WhatsApp channel for ongoing support. People like this. There's a direct line to me for quick questions, so that if something comes up between the sessions that we formally meet at, that you can just ask, and then I can help you through whatever it is, and then you can keep moving forward, because we don't want to be getting stuck on any of this. And then the last part is accountability. So this is about a structured way of staying accountable to getting this stuff done, keeping you on track, making the changes, and making sure that you make consistent progress in this. Now, my programs, they get really, really good results. You'll find loads of reviews across social media. There's a handful of them. The program itself, it's a 6-month program. Whoops. I'll come to that in a minute. You need 3 hours a month for it. Anything outside of those 3 hours that you spend with me, you will be doing things that you would be doing anyway in your role. It's just that you'll be tweaking them, tailoring them, or maybe just focusing on something slightly different to what you might have planned. So the program itself is practical, it's well paced, it's actionable. You know, I had someone join me that was thinking about joining in January, and then she realised that there's no point in waiting for that, because actually this is all part of the role and can be done as you go. So that's the best thing about the programme, because I know that MDs and CEOs are really busy people. So I'll support you over those months to make those changes in a way that's very manageable for you, but actually make sure that you get them done. I'm offering, as you can see there, some team audits today. There are, as always, only a limited number of those calls because I've only got limited availability to do that type of work. And on the call, we will go through where your team are now, where you want them to be. We'll map out a plan for you to get there. And then you can ask any questions that you'd like to about the programme too. Like I say, there's a limited amount of time, and I've actually only got, for the calls, and I've only got 2 places in the accelerator right now because I don't work with loads of people on this. It's a tailored, bespoke, personalised programme. If you can't find time in my diary, then feel free to email me and I'll do my best, or you can message me on LinkedIn or something. So get in touch anyway, let me know, and we'll see what we can do to find something that works for you. So, look, I hope that's been helpful. I'm going to ask any questions of you now. So I can see actually that there are a lot of people here still live. I've not checked the chat box for a second. Okay. So there's actually a lot of people here still live. So I wonder if you've got questions right now, because what can happen is I've left questions unanswered in the first part. So let me know, have you got any questions that I haven't answered for you today that you came and you really hoped you get an answer to? Because I'm really very happy to say we've got 9 minutes, or a bit longer if you like, and I'll answer any questions. And if you feel like you don't want to ask it directly into the chat, please do use the Q&A. Please do use the ask the host part of the, I don't know what the prompt says, but there's something where you can actually message me directly and everybody else can't see who's asking. So if you would like to ask questions and you don't want to share them with everybody, please do ask into the Q&A and then I'll answer those for you, because well, we've got some time and I'm really happy to answer anything. So okay. See, there are a lot of people still live, so I wonder, sometimes people wait for other people to ask questions and see if that answers something that they've not thought about. So, but if you are sat there with a question, please do ask. Like I say, really super happy to help. And that can be anything really. Sometimes people want to ask about the content of the piece that I've gone through in terms of what needs to happen. Other people want to ask questions about the programme. So whichever it is, happy to answer on either of those for you. Okay, still a lot of people live, so I don't know if that's because people have got questions and they want to hang on and see if other people ask things. If I don't get anything in a moment, then I will assume that you're probably okay for now. If you are sat there with a question, well, you can ask me privately anyway, but if you want to, you can also DM me on LinkedIn. So that's another option. I'm on there fairly often throughout the day. So, okay. Yeah, there don't appear to be any questions, so I'm going to leave that there for now. Thank you so much for coming along today. I really hope that you found that useful and you've got some good takeaways. And I will look forward to seeing some of you on the team audit calls and taking this all just one step further for you. So take care for now, and I'll speak to you soon.